As we move into the later seasons of life, there's a quiet wisdom that settles in. We begin to see things differently than we did in our younger years. The little quarrels of the past don't seem as important anymore. And what we value most often comes down to peace, respect, and the feeling of being safe in our own homes. But sometimes, instead of peace, there can be tension, words that cut deeper than they should, or actions that leave us feeling small and powerless. And that's one of the hardest truths to admit, that even in old age, when we should be surrounded by gentleness, some of us carry the silent weight of violence. It doesn't always look like what people imagine. Sometimes it's not raised hands, but raised voices. Not visible bruises, but the heavy burden of being ignored, controlled, or spoken to without kindness. And if you've ever found yourself wondering if what you are experiencing is normal, let me tell you this. If it hurts your heart, if it steals your sense of dignity, then it matters. Aging doesn't mean you've lost the right to be treated with respect. In fact, the opposite is true. The more years you carry, the more you deserve tenderness. There's a quiet kind of suffering that often goes unnoticed in older people because many believe it's too late to change things or they don't want to make trouble. But let's reflect for a moment. If you had a dear friend, someone your age, who told you they were being spoken to harshly every day, would you tell them to just accept it? Or would you remind them that their well-being matters, no matter how many birthdays they've celebrated? Sometimes it's easier to give compassion to others than to ourselves. The truth is, violence in later life can feel like a betrayal because it comes when we are most in need of gentleness. And yet, acknowledging it doesn't mean you are weak. On the contrary, it means you are listening to that inner voice that says, "I deserve more." It's worth pausing to ask yourself quietly, do I feel safe in my home? Do I feel respected by the people closest to me? Do I find myself shrinking inside when certain words are spoken, or when silence is used like a weapon? These questions aren't meant to accuse or to push you. They are gentle mirrors, helping you see whether what you are experiencing is the nurturing environment you deserve. And remember, every stage of life has its challenges, but it also has its freedoms. One of the most profound freedoms of old age is the ability to see clearly what really matters and to no longer waste precious energy on what hurts us unnecessarily. If your heart whispers that something is not right, honor that whisper. It's your wisdom speaking. I'd love to hear from you. What part of the world are you reading this from? Share in the comments below. One of the most important steps in finding peace again is simply learning to recognize when something is not right. That may sound obvious, but the truth is, many older people spend years telling themselves that what they are going through is just normal family tension, or that they should be more patient. Martha, a gentle woman of 72, once shared her story with me. For decades, she had accepted her husband's sharp words as a sign of stress, even laughing it off with friends as his old age grumpiness. But over time, she noticed something deeper happening. The constant stream of criticism began to erode her confidence. She found herself apologizing for things that weren't her fault, shrinking a little more each day. When her granddaughter pointed out that she seemed sadder than usual, Martha realized that words could wound more deeply than any bruise. Her journey wasn't about blaming, but about finally naming what she was experiencing. That shift alone gave her a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. And maybe that's the first gentle step for you as well. Asking yourself if the way you are spoken to, treated, or controlled feels right in your heart. Violence isn't always physical. It can be emotional, in the form of belittling or constant criticism. It can be financial, when someone controls your money in a way that makes you feel powerless. It can even be about isolation, when you are cut off from friends, neighbors, or the activities that once brought you joy. If you notice that you walk on eggshells around someone, that you hesitate to answer the phone, or fear the sound of footsteps in your own home, these are signs that something may not be as it should. Recognizing this is not about judgment, it's about awareness, about gently opening your eyes to what your heart already knows. And once you see it, you can begin to take small steps toward change. It might start with keeping a little journal, writing down moments when you felt hurt or diminished. It might mean quietly sharing your feelings with a trusted friend, a doctor, or even just a neighbor who listens without judgment. These are not acts of defiance, they are acts of self-respect. And sometimes, naming your experience is enough to remind you that you still have choices. You are not too old to draw boundaries. You are not too frail to say, "This does not feel right." Your worth does not decrease with age. In fact, every year adds layers of wisdom that give you the power to see clearly. If what you've just read feels familiar, if something in your heart stirs with recognition, know that you are not alone. And if you'd like to continue receiving gentle guidance and stories like Martha's that may help you reflect on your own journey, I invite you to subscribe. Together, we can keep walking this path of awareness and quiet strength. But there is something else we must gently acknowledge. As we age, our bodies and minds react differently to stress than they once did. What you might have brushed off in your 30s or 40s can now linger, weighing more heavily on your health. Doctors often explain that chronic stress releases certain chemicals in the body, hormones like cortisol, that, when present for too long, begin to wear down the systems that are supposed to protect you. In younger years, the body can recover more quickly, but in later life, the effects accumulate. High blood pressure, weakened immunity, poor sleep, even memory problems. These can all be worsened by living in an environment of constant fear or criticism. You may have noticed yourself that when tension builds at home, your chest feels tighter, your thoughts become foggy, or your body seems more tired than usual. These aren't signs of weakness. They are signs that your body, after carrying you so faithfully through the decades, is telling you it needs gentleness, not pressure. I once met a man named Robert who, at 78, had lived for years with the strain of being shouted at by his adult son. He told me he thought he was just getting old because he felt exhausted all the time. But when he eventually found a calmer place to live, he noticed something remarkable. His sleep improved, his appetite returned, and even his walking felt steadier. It wasn't just age that had been wearing him down, it was the environment of stress. That's the thing about later years. Your body becomes more transparent, almost like a mirror, reflecting the emotions around you. Peace in your surroundings nourishes your health, while conflict quietly erodes it. So the question is not simply, am I enduring this situation, but rather, what is this doing to my well-being? If you find your heart racing after a harsh word, or if your body feels heavy with fatigue that doesn't lift, it may not be age alone. It may be the toll of living without safety or respect. Allow yourself to consider this truth with compassion, not blame. You are not failing because you feel fragile. Your body is simply asking for what it has always needed: calm, respect, and care. And here is the gentle reminder. Protecting your peace is not only about your emotions, it is about your health and even your life. Every small step you take toward kindness, whether that means speaking to someone you trust or creating moments of quiet comfort for yourself, is a way of giving your body and mind the healing they deserve. Choose one person you trust, a longtime friend, a kind neighbor, a relative who listens without judgment, and share just a little of what you are going through. Speaking aloud what has been locked in your heart can feel like loosening a tight knot. You don't have to tell the whole story if you're not ready. Even saying, "I feel uneasy at home," can open a door. Your feelings deserve to be heard, and sometimes the act of being listened to is already a form of healing. Another step is to quietly gather the things that matter most: important documents, identification, maybe a small sum of money, and keep them in a place you can reach quickly if needed. This isn't about preparing for disaster. It's about giving yourself a quiet reassurance that you have choices. Think of it as building a small safety net under your feet so that even if the ground shakes, you know it won't collapse completely. It can also help to have numbers written down, not only stored in a phone. A helpline, a local support service, your doctor's office, even a trusted neighbor's number. Seeing them written on paper can give you comfort, especially if technology fails you in a moment of need. Don't underestimate the strength of small routines either. Perhaps it's a morning walk, a short prayer, writing a few lines in a notebook, or listening to calming music before bed. These rituals may seem simple, but they create an anchor of stability in days that might otherwise feel uncertain. They remind you that you are still in touch with yourself, that your life is not defined only by someone else's behavior. As you consider these steps, ask yourself gently, which of these feels possible for me right now? There is no pressure to do them all. Choose one that feels kind to your spirit. Each small act is like planting a seed, and even if it takes time, seeds do grow. Remember, change often begins quietly, not with noise or confrontation, but with a whispered decision in your heart. I will take care of myself. These small actions may feel like pebbles, but together they create a path toward a safer, calmer tomorrow. And you, after all you've lived through, deserve nothing less than that. There is a belief many people carry silently, especially in later life, that it's somehow noble to endure suffering, that staying quiet or putting up with mistreatment is part of love or duty, or simply the way things must be. But let me tell you gently, this is a myth and a heavy one. Enduring pain does not make you stronger, and it does not bring harmony to a home. Respect is not something you outgrow with age. You do not need to earn it, and you do not lose the right to it when you become dependent on others. The truth is, dignity belongs to you for as long as you breathe. I once spoke with Elena, a woman of 81, who believed for many years that speaking up about the harsh words of her adult daughter would only cause more conflict. She told herself, "I'm old, I should just let it go." But the longer she stayed silent, the smaller she felt inside. One day, after a particularly cruel remark, she whispered to herself, "No more." That moment didn't mean she shouted or left. It meant she finally gave herself permission to believe she deserved kindness. From that simple change in perspective, her courage grew. Sometimes the shift we need begins not with the world around us, but with how we see ourselves. Aging is not about surrendering your voice. It is about using your wisdom to recognize what truly matters. And what matters more than anything is peace in your heart and respect in your daily life. Ask yourself gently, what would it feel like to live in a home where you felt safe every morning? What would it mean to you if conversations ended not in fear, but in calm? These aren't just dreams for the young, they are rights that belong to you now, in this very season of your life. You don't have to take giant leaps, you don't have to fix everything at once, but you can begin by carrying this thought with you. I deserve to be treated with respect. Hold it close like a stone in your pocket, something solid and real to touch when the world feels shaky. With time, that quiet conviction can guide you toward choices that honor your well-being. You have lived through decades of change. You have carried burdens and joys, and you have earned the right to peace. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. If these words resonate with you, I warmly invite you to subscribe so we can keep walking together through conversations of healing and wisdom. And tell me, from your heart, what does peace at home mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below.